I also know that you're a practicing physician in the state of Florida. How how did you decide that? What made you decide that you want to become a physician?
Dude, this is a really fascinating story. Close your ears. So,
Gynecologist?
Why just me?
What's her name?
both my parents were school teachers. My father was a PhD in science education. He taught high school biology, chemistry, and physics. So I grew up in a scientific household. Two of my uncles were doctors. Two of my cousins are doctors. So it was assumed I was going to go to medical school. I did not want to be a doctor. So my father was like, well, you could be a lawyer. You talk an awful lot. You argue a lot, so you could be a lawyer too. And all the lawyers I knew were corrupt individuals, and I was like, nah, I don't want to be that either. So I went to Wall Street and became a commodities broker. I had a Series 7 license, and I sold gold and silver financial futures and foreign currency futures. So I was going to become the money guy. And then in 1979, I went to hear the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama said that you should live a life of service. And Yeshi Dandin was his personal physician who was traveling with him, and he was lecturing at NYU Medical School. So I went to hear Yeshi Dandin speak, and he cured 5 people of incurable cancer with acupuncture and herbs. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, is cure cancer. So that's when I made my decision. Now, Yeshi Dandin stayed in New York about 6 months, and there was a group of us who were studying Tibetan medicine. Then he had to go back to Dharamsala, India, which is the refugee community in India. And so we were like, what are we going to do now? And then I read in the paper that this guy, Oscar Wexu, was treating racehorses with acupuncture. So I found out what hotel he was staying at. I went down, I went to see him, and he says, funny you should ask, I just opened an acupuncture school called the Quebec School of Acupuncture. So I said, well, how do I get in? He says, well, come and see me. So a few months later, I flew to Quebec, I flew to Montreal. I met him and his daughter and his son, and I enrolled in the school. And then I went to Montreal for 2 years to study acupuncture. I came back and I got a job at Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx doing ear acupuncture for drug addiction. And while I was there, I met this guy, George Wu, who was the president of the Chinese American Acupuncture Association, who was the antithesis of my imaginary acupuncture academic. He wore red bow ties, had a big belly, chain smoked cigarettes. And I just couldn't imagine that this guy was the president of the association. He's smoking cigarettes and he's got this big belly, and that didn't sit with my idea of what an I'm thinking the acupuncturist wears robes and, you know, lights incense and candles, and so it just went against what my imagination. And then I met Master Li, who was this Taoist Qigong master who had escaped from China during the Cultural Revolution. So he was lecturing on Qigong. So I went to hear him speak, and then I went to hear him a second time, I went to hear him a third time, and then he said, I want you to work with me. So I closed my acupuncture practice to go work with him. So for the next 6 years, I worked with Master Li. And
in New York?
In New York City, yeah, and he was doing Qigong at Daya's Place and Chinatown, and he taught classes a lot of different places. He had over 70 students. So his granddaughter came to visit, and his granddaughter became his favorite, which obviously blood is thicker than mud. And I put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. So I leave New York, I moved to Florida, and in 1994 he calls me on the phone. He says, I'm going to die soon. My granddaughter's killed in a car accident, my wife had a stroke, and I'm not going to live long. And I want to transmit my family Qigong to you. Well, I was in shock, I wasn't prepared. Isn't there somebody else you can give this to? You have a lot of other students. And Wolde was in India at the time. So I was like, okay. And he says, I want to see you, like, now. I'm like, Master Lee, I got to practice. I can't leave. He's like, I want to see you now. And he hangs up on me. So I'm like, okay, I got to go. So I think I paid like $700 for a ticket to get to New York the next day. My master calls, and then he tells me he's going to do the ceremony to transmit the lineage. And I was like, oh my God. And he made me promise to write a book and to teach, because he didn't want his family lineage to die, because this goes back to 1700 and something. So I was like, okay. So we fast forward to 1999. I'm doing Qigong every day, but I'm not getting students. I'm not doing what he asked me to do, but I'm doing the Qigong every day. 1999, I'm on the beach, I'm doing Qigong, and he literally materializes in front of me. And he's standing there with this disapproving glance, and he says, why aren't you doing what I asked? And I'm like looking around to see if anybody can see this apparition. There's nobody on the beach. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Sun is shining, and okay. So I made a commitment, and that year I shot the photographs, wrote the book, and did the video, all that same, boom, boom, like that. And that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And I've been often teaching since then. So from acupuncture to Tibetan medicine to Qigong. Now, there's one other thread that has to be added to that. In 1986, I go hear the shaman speak. He's visiting New York, and he invites me to go to Togo to study African shamanism with him. So I'm like, okay. And then I'm hesitant because I don't want to spend the money to go. As much as I'm attracted to it, I don't want to spend the money. So this woman calls me on the phone, and she said, I have this guy here who's got malaria, and he doesn't have any money. Would you do me a favor and treat him? So I'm like, sure. I didn't say sure. I said, send him over. I was like not really happy about it, but so he comes in. So I treat the guy, and then a week later he comes back. I treat him again. A week later he comes back. I treat him a third time, and then I don't see him for a whole month. And then he comes back. He says, "You cured my malaria." And I'm like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you cured my malaria." Now, I treated him according to Chinese medicine protocol. I didn't treat him for malaria. I treated him for damp heat and chronic fevers. That's what I treated him for, not malaria. But the treatment worked, and he gives me a free plane ticket to Togo, and free hotel, and unlimited taxi service while I'm there. So I guess I'm going to Togo to study with this shaman. So I get to Africa. I've never been to Africa before. I get off the plane. I kiss the ground. I get up. There's 4 guys with semi-automatic weapons. They think I'm a Muslim terrorist.
Don't kiss the ground.
Kiss the ground? What are you? Who do you think you are? So I'm like, no, it's my first time. So now I'm in interrogation in a room. And the absurdity of it all, I just start laughing and laughing. And they are incensed that I'm not taking them seriously. So then the guy's he's going to rifle butt me. And I just looked at him like, you're going to rifle butt me because I'm laughing at you? I said, I wonder how powerless you are that you have to threaten me and actually beat me with a gun. I said, I didn't do anything wrong. And you call whoever you want to call. You can fingerprint me. Do whatever you want. You're not intimidating me. So finally, after about 30 minutes, somebody walks in, classic, with the cigarette like this, blowing smoke in my face, and I start laughing at him. It's like out of a movie. So then finally, somebody says, "Let him go," and I'm released. That same night, I don't know. It's the 20th anniversary of the presidency of Togo. I have no clue. The beach, the next day was the celebration. So I decided to go from my 5-star hotel to the beach. Well, the soldiers must have taken the smoke break at the moment I walk across the street. So I'm like walking in the water. I come back again with the soldiers and the guns. And I'm like, I already went through this once today, fellas. You're gonna shoot me? Shoot me. So they're yelling at me, and I don't speak Togolese, and again I'm just laughing. So they take me to the lieutenant, who fortunately does speak English, and he proceeds to tell me that I violated protocol. I'm like, well, dude, there was nothing there. I went to walk across the street. So he says, well, if you give me a little something that I can give to the soldiers, I'm sure we'll let it all go. And I'm like, bribery and corruption. Okay. So they had told me that this was going to happen. So I brought gum and cigarette lighters.
No beads.
No beads. I wasn't giving them any money. So I gave them gum and cigarette lighters. They were happy as little kids. So the next day, I go meet the shaman. And we get there, and the shaman isn't there. So everybody is all upset the shaman's not there. I'm like, I'm in Africa. It's okay. He comes whenever he wants to come. I don't have to see the shaman. I'm here. You know, it's his house. When he gets here, he gets here. Of everybody, I was the only one that was cool and calm. So when we get there, everybody's like, and I'm just smiling. And he looks at everybody and he's like, you must be Dr. Love. Come with me. And he shuts everybody else out because their energy was so agitated. And he said, I don't have a lot to say to you, but I know that the connection between us already exists. So an hour later, the chief comes in a Mercedes. The two of them talk, and the chief gets down on his knees and bows to me and declares me his grandfather and says, you are now the protector of our village. Huh? I just got here. How did I get to be the protector of your village? The ancestors did a reading before you got here. We know who you are. You are now the protector of our village. So I got initiated into Mami Wata, which is a African spiritist tradition. And I won't bore you with the rest of the story, but that's how it all got started. So these 4 threads came together.